looks like we're ready to start. We're having to work on a technical issue. Welcome to the virtual news conference. FAA Administrator Steve Dickson just completed flying the 737 MAX. We're going to do a workaround where we'll have questions from the room, and then I'll also take questions over Zoom. If you're on Zoom, the way to do that is to go into the Q&A field, type your question, and then we'll get to as many of them as we can. With that, I'd like to introduce Steve Dickson.
Well, thanks, Lynn, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Shortly after I took the helm at the FAA, I made a promise that I would fly the 737 MAX and that I wouldn't sign off on its return until I was comfortable putting my family on it. And I took the same training beginning last weekend and into this week that the Joint Operations Evaluation Board, or JOEB, looked at during its work at London Gatwick Airport in recent days. And this was followed by a session in the 737 simulator, during which I had the opportunity to experience a variety of problems that presented the relevant emergencies that might occur. And today I flew a similar flight profile in the airplane itself. I want to make it clear that my flight was separate from the official certification process that is still underway and still in progress by the FAA. And I'm fortunate to be surrounded by some of the top aviation safety experts in the world to advise me on the engineering aspects of this project. But at the end of the day, I'm a pilot, and my lens into the world of aviation has been my decades of experience in the front of the airplane. So it was important to me to experience firsthand the training and the handling of the aircraft so that I can have the most complete understanding possible as we continue to move forward with this process. Now, as you know, we recently posted a notice of proposed rulemaking for an airworthiness directive that would address various safety issues that we and our international partners identified during the last several months. The comment period on that NPRM closed on September 21st, and we're now reviewing and responding to those comments before posting a final rule. We expect to take input as well from the JOEB and include that on a draft Flight Standardization Board report, which should be posted for comment in the very near future. Now, I know you've heard me say this before, but the FAA continues to take a thorough and deliberate approach in our review of Boeing's proposed changes to the 737 MAX. We're in the home stretch, but that doesn't mean that we're going to take shortcuts to get it done by a certain date. The FAA, and I in particular, will not approve the plane for return to passenger service until I'm satisfied that we've adequately addressed all of the known safety issues that played a role in the tragic loss of 346 lives aboard Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. Not a day goes by that I and my colleagues don't think about the victims and their families and our solemn responsibility to get this right. And we will get it right. Now I'd be happy to take your questions.
Can you describe the emergency procedures you went through in the simulator, compare them to the emergency procedures you went through on the actual aircraft today, how they would play out?
Certainly.
Could you repeat the question
Yeah.
so that the Zoom audience can hear it?
Yeah. So the question was, can I compare what I experienced in the simulator with what I experienced on the flight today? So in the simulator, I went through both the ground training, the virtual or the distance learning, to prepare myself to understand the systems and the new non-normal checklists that are being proposed. And in the simulator this week, I had the opportunity to gain experience with all of that documentation and those procedures to see how they work on the flight deck. I also completed a flight test profile that went through how the MCAS system functions, and that was essentially identical to the flight that I had today. It was the same profile in the sim with the 10 test conditions, and again, not just around MCAS, but of all of the changes that were made to the flight control computers and the autopilot system and everything else with the new design.
Obviously today's about proving that this updated maps is safe, but it has undergone very special and intense scrutiny for 19 months now. I want to ask you about proving future airplane safe under regular scrutiny ahead. I have a couple of questions on that. Last December, the first one was about delegation of work from the FAA to Boeing. Last December, you told the House Committee you were reviewing how you structured delegation. The House Committee, both Republicans and Democrats, on Monday issued proposed legislation that would revert to a previous delegation structure. For example, authorized representatives would be appointed by the FAA, not by Boeing. FAA safety engineers would talk directly to the Boeing counterparts, not to managers. Are those proposals for adjusting the vulnerabilities of the delegation process going to be supported?
Well, first of all, I can't comment specifically on pending legislation, but to your point, I would say that at the outset, we appreciate Congress's interest in improving aviation safety. I and the FAA, we're all about continuous improvement. We can always, as I've said many times, safety is a journey, and it is something that we need to continually address from a standpoint of humility, and that we can always get better. So from my standpoint, what we want to do is we need to make sure that, in this case, the manufacturers and the operators out there are stepping up to the plate, and that they are responsible for the safety of the products that they are putting out there. The FAA needs to be in a position so that it can oversee their design and production systems most effectively. So if we're taking a systemic approach, remember we have an aviation system. We don't want to get tunnel vision on one aspect of design. We need to think about human factors. We need to think about the entire global fleet. We need to think about all the different operators that are out there, and make sure that we've got the absolute safest aircraft, training, and everything else out there that can promote aviation safety.
At the end of last week, Patrick Key, the executive director of EASA, said that they're going to follow the FAA very shortly. They're also approaching the end game of this. But they are going to add to the MAX a third synthetic KOA sensor. And they also want to find a way to stop the erroneous stick shooting. He made it very clear these are requirements that they can follow. To avoid a lower level of safety for U.S. airlines, will the FAA mandate those same design changes?
Don't forget to summarize the question.
Right. So the question is essentially based partially on comments made by EASA, but also just previous reporting about nuisance stick shaker and other synthetic AOA or an additional AOA sensor. Are we going to mandate that? Remember that this process is designed to address the issues that the airplane was grounded for. And we have hundreds of millions of hours of service experience on the 737 aircraft. It's one of the safest airplanes in its service history that's ever been built. I think statistically it may be the safest airplane that's ever been built. Having said that, we have a continuous operational safety process that's designed to address in-service aircraft, and we will continue to work with the manufacturer on those kinds of issues going forward. We have a very robust established process to be able to do that. I'll also say that all the authorities, EASA, Transport Canada, and ANAC in Brazil, and the FAA in the U.S. have strived for consensus, and there's very little daylight between the authorities on this project, on these issues, and we will work to make sure that we've got good, solid alignment across the globe now and in the future. I anticipate that we will ultimately be aligned. Yes.
Okay, I've got a question from the Zoom. Do you believe the MAX is safe, and would you put your family on it after your flight?
The question, do I believe the MAX is safe? Would I put my family on it? Well, first of all, I believe in leadership by example. And as I said in my opening remarks, I'm a pilot, and so it was important to me to get out here and support the team and see what they were really seeing and have the dialogue with them. We still have some work to do yet. My flight today and the training that I undertook, I think, gives me an excellent baseline as an aviator to be able to understand the systems and understand how they are being utilized on the flight deck and how the airplane performs. And it has been a productive, constructive week, and I liked what I saw on the flight this morning. But it is not. We are not to the point yet where we have completed the process. We've got a number of comments on the NPRM. We've got to let the JOEB process, the Flight Standardization Board report, be completed. We're going to put that out for comment as well, and then we'll see where we end up after those parts of the process are completed.
Can you be more specific in terms of, as you were going through, particularly on the flight today, when part of the profile would be to introduce a MCAS bill? Can you talk about how that went, how that feels, and how the airplane managed?
Well, there's, again, the flight today replicated the test conditions of the new design of the aircraft. So I could see at what points in the flight envelope, and it's pretty limited. Pitch augmentation systems are not a new thing on aircraft. So I got a chance to see how the new system performed, and essentially it's a much more benign system than the original design, and how the pilots would deal with that during different parts of the flight envelope.
Do you feel like you had time to react, or did the system really kind of do it?
No, I had plenty of. I felt very comfortable and I felt very prepared, based on the training that's been proposed and that I completed.
Okay, I've got one more, and then we'll get to you, John. Given the findings in the House Transportation Committee report and those contained in several other investigations into the MAX certification, and the fact that your agency deemed the plane compliant and airworthy when it was demonstratively flawed, why should the flying public have any confidence in the FAA's ability to determine the aircraft is safe?
Well, first of all, we have been very transparent and joined at the hip with our international counterparts, our foreign counterparts in the other states of design. So that's number one. Secondly, we have, through our own internal reviews and all of the other reviews that have been done by the NTSB, the report that was mentioned in the question, the Secretary's Special Committee on Aircraft Certification, the Joint Authorities Technical Review. We are having all of those action items we are in the process of completing, and we are incorporating into what we are doing now for the return to service process with the MAX. And they will also form the basis for certification reforms that we are already undertaking within the agency, and we will continue to do that.
Okay, John.
The late fall, you said you
the FAA's role in handling of both the official certification of the airplane and the recertification process. As you fly the airplane today, do you feel that the trust, not just the trust in the airplane, the trust in Boeing amongst the general public, but the trust in the FAA requires you to have an event like today to show that it is in fact in control of America's largest exporter and your chief company that you regulate? And ultimately, is this sufficient to restore that trust? And are there additional steps that you feel the FAA has to take itself to restore the trust in its own way?
Well, it's a,
Kind of, I'll summarize just
Yeah.
to make sure we got all the parts. Essentially, what you're asking is, you know, I'm rephrasing, so tell me if I'm wrong, but does the FAA have the public trust that it needs to be able to say the aircraft is safe?
You know, is today's flight, your being in the controls of the aircraft, part of not just restoration of trust in the airplane for the general public, but as restoration of the trust in your role as a regulator for your
Is today's flight a demonstration of our role as a regulator that we felt like we had to do, given some of the issues that had come up with a perception that there was pressure from outside the FAA to get this done?
Yes, number one. Number two, ultimately, does the FAA have more to do in terms of restoring the trust the public has in its ability to operate as a regulator?
Well-
And does the FAA have more to do?
yeah. So let me answer the second part first. I don't think you ever stop trying to earn the trust of the public and of others. You know, the processes that we undertake and the work that we do has led to an unprecedented level of safety in commercial aviation in the United States over the last 20 years. So that's something that the FAA can be very proud of. And I think over the years, the FAA has done more than any organization in the world to promote aviation safety, and we will continue to do that. Having said that, I will be the first one to tell you that no matter what we are doing, what we have done in the past and what we are doing now is never going to be good enough, and it's never going to be good enough in the future. So we have to continue to conduct ourselves with humility. I will let others decide whether the FAA is the gold standard or not. I made the commitment to be here, and I'm following through on that commitment. And I think that that's very important because I want everyone, all stakeholders to understand. I want the families to understand. I want the flying public to understand that when we get through with this process, as I said at the beginning, we will do it right. And this is part of, in my book, of doing it right.
From a human factors perspective, we went through the training yesterday. Certainly so much of the discussion around 610 and the Ethiopian craft focused on the role of the stick shaker, the role of the placards, the role of external stimuli. Did you experience that you're this trained 737 pilot? Did you have an opportunity to replicate any of the conditions that occurred in those crashes to understand sort of the baseline from a human factors perspective as you went into your training?
Yes, I did that this week, and also I had done it about a year ago when shortly after I arrived at the FAA, I came out to, and at that time, it was a much more modest, really a redesign of MCAS. What we have ended up with is actually a number of design improvements that have been made that have been really much broader than just MCAS itself.
Okay, that I need to get to a question from the Zoom. Mr. Administrator, the FAA's own safety engineers, through their union, commented on the NPRM you mentioned, saying additional changes are needed to resolve cockpit confusion in the crashes. What is your response to their concerns?
So we will, there are a number of comments, I think as you all know, for the NPRM. And we have a process for reviewing and responding to those comments that is in work now. So that's number one. It's premature. I don't want to get out in front of where that process is going to go in terms of dealing with those issues that have come up. Secondly, though, I will say that I had a chance this week to look my team in the eye and to see where they are with this effort, and I'm very proud of what they have done. They have been extremely committed and have worked night and day and weekends in a very difficult environment with COVID to make sure that that all this work was done the way that it needs to be done. So I would also say that when you have a group of engineers or a group of pilots, in my book, the last thing that we want is groupthink. We want to challenge each other. We want to challenge assumptions. And then ultimately we have to make a decision about how we're going to move forward together. Consensus is actually pretty rare in these processes. And so that debate, I hope, will continue. I think it's a healthy debate to have, and we will continue to have it and foster an environment of transparency and openness so that we can make the best possible safety decisions in these situations.
Okay, one more from the Zoom call. House Democrats recently released a report on how MCAS was originally designed and approved on the MAX. Can you go beyond the agency's brief statement released after the report? How would you address allegations that Boeing held too much sway over FAA managers?
So in terms of Boeing holding too much sway, I can just respond to my experience in the last 13 months or so at the agency. I know that has been a concern, and it is something that needs to consistently be managed. In terms of the decisions that were made and any undue pressure, we are certainly continuing to look into those issues. And if we need to take any action, we will certainly take action on those issues. But at this point in the process, it is not something that I'm seeing in the current relationship, but it definitely needs to continue to be an area of focus. There's always going to be, in large organizations, whether it's an airline or a manufacturing company, there's always going to be pressure. And the leadership has to manage that pressure. And they have to tell the employees that they've got their back on safety. And that's exactly what I've told my team at the FAA, is that I've got their back on these issues.
One more from the room, and I've had 2 or 3 here that have popped up that are along the same lines. In flying the MCAS profile specifically, what did you experience, and were you satisfied with the recovery process? Was there anything in the sim or the flight that you found troubling or unsatisfactory?
So the question, we don't need to repeat the question in this case, but so as I said, I like what I saw. It's been a constructive week. That doesn't mean that I don't have some debrief items for the Boeing team, and the FAA team will be doing some debriefs later on this afternoon. I have some observations that I'm going to share with them, and that will be incorporated into the process going forward.
Obviously, we have Max's parked out here. There's 800 of them parked around the world that are flying because of grounding. Today, Boeing was getting reports out of the Wall Street Journal that Boeing may be close to its decision to move 787 production line from Everett to South Carolina, where it already has a lot of growth there. So the economic importance of this airplane is sort of critical to this area. What do you see, say, the folks who work at Boeing or even within the community, sort of COVID's impact on the airline notwithstanding, would like to get back to business as normal on this aircraft, knowing that you've already said it?
Well, again, I would just say that the FAA is going to play its part but we're going to make sure that the process is completed correctly. That's in everyone's best interest. We will be demanding on those that we regulate, but we will be fair. And so we have, and I think that the Boeing needs to share our emphasis on aviation safety. That is a core value for them, as they state. But again, inculcating that through the entire culture takes strong leadership, and it happens over a period of time. So we will be working with them on those issues going forward.
Dominic?
Steve, I'd like to ask you a question that actually comes from one of the families that was mentioned in the video this morning, and it's something that the family has been repeating. It comes back to the issue of trust. What the email said is from the father of one who died in the exam, was that they see today's flight as a public relations study. The guests are going, they asked, why don't you provide technical details and descriptions of test data that could be independently looked at by outside experts in order to verify independently that everything is good? Can you say why that's not possible?
Okay, so the two-part question, is this a publicity stunt? And why haven't we released some of the data that's been asked for? This is not a publicity stunt. This is simply the fulfillment of a commitment, a promise that I made within my first few weeks at the FAA. And it is, since I ultimately will be charged with making the decision on this aircraft, before I'm going to sign my name on the dotted line, I believe that it is important for me to lead from the front and be here to really see the nuts and bolts of how this process is being completed now that it's gotten to a certain point of maturity. In terms of the data sharing, I think we have been transparent to an unprecedented degree. It has been a very high priority of mine. I understand the desire for transparency. We are providing everything we can within the law. Much of the data, I believe, that's being asked for is proprietary in nature, but we have been very transparent with the other foreign authorities. We will also have an independent review, which I haven't even mentioned yet, by the Technical Advisory Board that will be running in parallel with our own final certification review. So I'm very confident in the process, and we have kept the families informed as we have met various stages and various milestones in the process, and we will continue to do that.
I've got one question here from the flight. Administrator Dickson, please describe how it felt piloting the MAX today and how the plane responded when you conducted maneuvers to test MCAS and enhanced pilot procedures.
Well, the airplane has, again, I completed a number of test profiles today to examine the functionality of the aircraft, and I liked what I saw. So it responded well. I did 2 landings and also some airwork maneuvers over about a 2-hour period, and I liked what I saw, and I felt prepared. I think most importantly, I felt that the training prepared me to be very comfortable in the airplane, and I haven't actually flown the 737 in more than 10 years, almost 15 years now. So I felt very comfortable, in the seat on the airplane.
One question from the floor. What are some of the issues you're going to share with the Boeing team and with your FAA team?
So again, I don't want to get out in front of the process. I have a few items that I want to point out. There are more items of how various things are emphasized, not so much in the procedures, but in some of the narrative that describes the procedures and some of the human factors issues on the aircraft. And that's really bringing in my number of years of experience in airline operational training. And just some things that I think could use a little more emphasis, perhaps, but I certainly want to have that dialogue.
Good, John.
Over the last 10 years, going back to the FAA review of the 777 process, documented routine manufacturing issues, particularly
You know, I'm not going to comment on.
Repeat the question,
Okay.
it's just,
So we've got essentially, I think to boil it down, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, but the questions on some of the aspects of production, 787 production, some of the issues that we've been working through there, the undue pressure, what's my feeling of the current environment.
Obviously, two very high profile crashes and a grounding.
Right, right. So I think to start with, there, obviously, as we know, there's relatively new leadership at Boeing, and I think that they are making some changes in the right direction. What we will need to see is executing on those changes over a period of time to drive the necessary cultural improvements that will need to take place. So that's something that we are watching very closely, and I made that very clear to the Boeing leadership when I met with them earlier this week.
The culture that you saw before was indicative of something systemically wrong with its approach towards manufacturing quality and safety?
I don't know that it was systemically wrong, but there were definitely areas of concern. And I reserve, you know, I'm not going to comment on additional actions we may take. I'm reserving the right to take additional action as I see fit, depending on what happens, you know, over the last few months and from here on out.
okay, I think we've got time for about 2 more questions. We'll take one from the room here and then one from the Zoom call. Dominic?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about one aspect of the handling of the drone that has been controversial. Obviously, in the Ethiopian flight, we believe the pilots tried to manually trim the stabilizers and be able to, because of the twist and the tail. And there have been various ways to try to counter that. There's this old roller coaster technique that some people think should come back. Is that something that's part of the training, or did you, in the training and in the flight, have any experience of situations where the handling, where the manual way is difficult to do?
No, I did not, and I experienced it for some period of time in the flight simulator and also on the flight today. So the airplane was, you know, at normal operating airspeeds and with a trimmed up or relatively trimmed up aircraft, and even one that's significantly out of trim, I did not have any difficulty.
Okay, one last question.
Say that again?
You don't believe the manual moving the wheel is going to be a problem?
No, I do not.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna ask that question again because it came in from the floor as well. It says, do you have concerns about the ability of pilots to trim the MAX using the manual trim wheel? Reports have said the wheel can be difficult to turn in some scenarios.
I do not have concerns in that area. Again, we need to remember in any non-normal, the basic steps are maintain control of the aircraft, analyze the situation, take the proper action, and then consider whether you need to land. And if you maintain control of the aircraft, then you're not going to have any problems within the normal flight envelope with the manual trimming system.
Okay, I think that's it for keeping on schedule. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in, and you know, we will have some video and photos and other things that will, including cockpit video from the flight, that should be available